750,000 pills seized in a massive drug trafficking operation, and federal agents say the alleged ringleader is now behind bars.
It is also indicative that the Mexican cartels continue to traffic significant quantities of fentanyl to Colorado, and the seizure has been tied to active DEA investigations involving federal, state, and local partners targeting the Sinaloa cartel.
At 4:47 in the morning, the streets of South Minneapolis were frozen. 11 degrees below zero. Fog clung to empty parking lots like a shroud. To the residents of Cedar Riverside, it was just another brutal January Tuesday. But outside, in the pre-dawn darkness, a shadow army was moving. More than 300 federal agents from the FBI's Organized Crime Division, the DEA's Narcotics Task Force, and ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement had been assembling since 3:15 a.m. armored black SUVs, tactical vans, SWAT teams in full ballistic gear. They rolled into position without sirens, cutting their headlights 2 blocks out. Their target wasn't a cartel safe house. It wasn't a meth lab or a stash house. It was something federal investigators now describe as far more dangerous. A family compound. A logistics empire. And at its center, a network that had turned American welfare programs into a pipeline for narcotics trafficking, money laundering, and what prosecutors allege is one of the largest fraud operations ever uncovered on U.S. soil. What they found inside would expose not just a crime, but a system. 1 minute ago, federal prosecutors unsealed the indictments. 47 individuals. Charges ranging from wire fraud to narcotics distribution to racketeering. The numbers are staggering. More than 1 million fentanyl pills seized. $47 million in cash. And a family structure so deeply embedded in fraudulent daycare centers, housing assistance programs, and shell companies that investigators spent 18 months just mapping the network. But here's the twist. The family at the center of this operation didn't hide in the shadows. They operated in plain sight. They owned businesses. They held community positions. They filed taxes. And federal agents allege they used every dollar of taxpayer-funded assistance as fuel for a drug distribution network that stretched from the Mexican border to the streets of Minneapolis. It began exactly 73 hours earlier. On Sunday, January 26th, at 11:34 p.m., a DEA confidential informant made contact with an undercover agent in a Walmart parking lot on the outskirts of Bloomington, Minnesota. The informant had been inside the network for 11 months. Embedded. Trusted. And what he handed over that night was a flash drive containing something federal investigators had been hunting for years. Financial records. Wire transfer receipts. And a master spreadsheet listing every property, every shell company, and every family member involved in what the DEA now calls Operation Frozen Pipeline. The name wasn't dramatic. It was literal. Minnesota had become a pipeline. A distribution hub for fentanyl pills manufactured in cartel labs across the Mexican border, smuggled north through a network of couriers, and funneled into the Midwest through what appeared to be legitimate businesses. Daycare centers that received federal childcare subsidies. But federal agents allege those centers were never caring for children. They were laundering drug money. Here's how it worked. The family would open a licensed daycare facility. They'd apply for federal assistance through Minnesota's Department of Human Services. Meal reimbursements. Childcare subsidies. Educational grants. The state would approve the applications with minimal oversight. The money would flow in. Tens of thousands of dollars per month per facility. But the children listed on enrollment forms didn't exist. Their names were fabricated. Their social security numbers were stolen or forged. And the daycare centers themselves were often empty. Dark windows. Locked doors. No children. The federal funds would be deposited into business accounts. Within 72 hours, the money would be transferred to personal accounts held by family members. From there, it would be wired overseas or converted into cash. And that cash, investigators now allege, was used to purchase bulk shipments of fentanyl pills from cartel suppliers operating near the southern border. The pills would be smuggled north in compartments hidden inside commercial vehicles. False bottom cargo vans. Refrigerated trucks with hydraulic chambers. Once in Minnesota, the pills would be stored in residential properties owned by the family, then distributed through street-level dealers across Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth, and into Wisconsin and the Dakotas. It was a closed loop. Taxpayer dollars funding the purchase of narcotics. Narcotics sold for profit. Profit laundered back through fraudulent businesses. And the cycle would repeat. Federal analysts estimate the network moved more than $8 million in fraudulent funds over a 3-year period. When you add the cash seized from drug sales, the total exposure exceeds $47 million. Think about that number. $47 million. Funneled through a system designed to help struggling families afford childcare. Instead, it was weaponized to poison American streets. At 4:34 a.m., the raids began. Team Alpha hit the main family residence on Portland Avenue South. A two-story brick home with reinforced security doors and surveillance cameras covering every angle. Agents used a breaching ram to force entry. Flashbangs shattered the early morning silence. Inside, they found 3 adult males and 2 females. All were detained without resistance. But it was what agents found in the basement that confirmed everything. Stacked along the far wall were 37 sealed cardboard boxes. Inside those boxes were vacuum-sealed bags. And inside those bags were fentanyl pills. Blue. Stamped with an M logo designed to mimic pharmaceutical oxycodone. Agents counted more than 400,000 pills in that basement alone. Enough to kill 200,000 people if each pill contained a lethal dose. But the operation didn't stop there. While Team Alpha secured the residence, Team Bravo hit a commercial property 3 miles away. A warehouse in the warehouse district listed on tax records as a food distribution center. Federal agents allege it was nothing of the kind. Inside, they found industrial-grade packaging equipment, scales, vacuum sealers, and another 600,000 fentanyl pills stored in climate-controlled units. The warehouse had loading docks, shipping manifests, invoices for deliveries to locations across 5 states. It was a distribution hub, disguised as a legitimate business. Team Charlie targeted a daycare center on Cedar Avenue. The center was licensed for 78 children. State records showed full enrollment. Federal meal reimbursement claims totaled more than $260,000 over the past 18 months. When agents arrived, the building was dark. The door was locked with 3 deadbolts. The windows were covered with blackout curtains. Agents forced entry. Inside, they found no children, no toys, no cribs, no evidence that any child had ever been present. What they did find was a desk, a computer, and file cabinets containing forged enrollment documents, fake birth certificates, stolen social security numbers, and financial records showing wire transfers totaling more than $400,000 routed through shell companies registered in Delaware and Nevada. The daycare was a front, a paperwork operation designed to extract federal funds while providing zero services. Investigators discovered that the family controlled at least 11 daycare facilities across the Twin Cities metro area, each one operating the same scheme. Ghost children, fake documents, federal funds flowing in, cash flowing out. If you believe federal programs need stronger oversight and accountability, hit that like button right now. Because this investigation only happened because one confidential informant refused to stay silent. By 6:10 a.m., federal agents had executed search warrants at 19 locations. They'd arrested 27 individuals. And they'd seized more than 1 million fentanyl pills, $47 million in cash, and financial records that investigators say will take months to fully analyze. But here's where it gets worse. As FBI forensic accountants began combing through the seized computers, they discovered something that made the investigation take a darker turn. Wire transfer records showing payments to 12 individuals who were not family members. Individuals whose names appeared in state employment databases. 2 licensing supervisors with Minnesota's Department of Human Services. 3 program auditors responsible for inspecting daycare facilities. A data analyst with access to enrollment verification systems. And 6 other state employees whose roles gave them oversight authority over the very programs being defrauded. Federal prosecutors allege these individuals received payments ranging from $18,000 to $93,000 over a 2-year period. The payments were disguised as consulting fees, cultural liaison services, translation contracts. But investigators believe the real purpose was protection. Early warnings about audits. Approved licenses without site inspections. Overlooked discrepancies in enrollment records. This wasn't just fraud. It was corruption. A network that had purchased silence inside the system, designed to prevent exactly this kind of abuse. How long had this been happening? Who else knew? And why did no one stop them? Internal documents obtained through federal subpoena reveal that Minnesota's Department of Human Services received fraud complaints about daycare centers as early as 2019. Whistleblowers flagged statistical anomalies. Enrollment numbers that didn't match census data. Meal claims that exceeded physical capacity. Facilities that appeared closed during business hours. Those complaints were filed, reviewed, and then buried. One former state employee, speaking to investigators under immunity, stated that supervisors actively discouraged fraud referrals involving certain immigrant-owned businesses. The stated reason was cultural sensitivity. The practical effect was a blind spot. And that blind spot allowed millions to vanish before anyone acted. At 9:02 a.m., U.S. Attorney Rachel Kovac held a press conference. She stood at a podium flanked by FBI Special Agent Marcus Trent and DEA Assistant Director Jennifer Hayes. Behind them, a table displayed evidence. Bricks of cash stacked 3 feet high. Bags of fentanyl pills. Forged documents. Kovac's statement was direct. 47 individuals charged. Conspiracy to distribute controlled substances. Wire fraud. Money laundering. Identity theft. Racketeering. If convicted, several defendants face sentences exceeding 40 years in federal prison. The human cost of this fraud is incalculable. Every fraudulent daycare claim is a real family that was waitlisted or denied services. Every dollar stolen from assistance programs is a dollar that didn't reach a working mother trying to afford quality care. Federal investigators estimate that the network's activities displaced services for more than 6,000 legitimate families over 4 years. But the drug trafficking component carries an even darker toll. Fentanyl is the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45. More than 70,000 overdose deaths annually. And every pill seized in this raid is a pill that could have ended up in a high school bathroom, a college dorm, a suburban kitchen. 1 million pills. Federal agents estimate that's enough supply to fuel street-level distribution for 8 months across the upper Midwest. If those pills had reached their intended destinations, the death toll could have been catastrophic. The family at the center of this operation operated with shocking discipline. They compartmentalized roles. Financial managers handled the fraud. Logistics coordinators managed the drug shipments. And at the top, a central figure investigators identify in court documents only as the coordinator. Federal agents allege the coordinator orchestrated the entire network, approved new daycare applications, authorized drug purchases, managed relationships with cartel suppliers, and maintained the protection network inside state agencies. But when agents raided the primary residence this morning, the coordinator was not present. Surveillance footage recovered from the property shows a vehicle leaving the compound at 11:47 p.m. on January 28, more than 5 hours before the raids began. The vehicle was a black Cadillac Escalade registered to a shell company. It drove south. And from there, the trail goes cold. Federal authorities believe the coordinator was tipped off. An internal investigation is now underway to determine how. U.S. Marshals have issued a federal warrant. Interpol has been notified. But as of now, the coordinator remains at large. This investigation continues. Subscribe now so you're here when the next indictments drop. Because federal prosecutors made it clear today, this is just the beginning. Here's what kept investigators awake last night. The seized servers contained more than financial records and drug manifests. They contained expansion plans. A document titled Phase 3 outlined strategies for replicating the Minnesota model in 12 additional cities. Denver, Phoenix, Seattle, Atlanta, Philadelphia. Each city was assigned a target launch date. Each had identified properties. Each had recruitment lists for state employees who could be approached for protection. The infrastructure was ready. The playbook was written. The only thing that stopped it was a flash drive handed over in a Walmart parking lot. The 27 individuals arrested this morning are in federal custody. Bail hearings are scheduled over the next 72 hours. Prosecutors will argue for pretrial detention, citing flight risk and the severity of the charges. The 12 state employees identified in wire transfer records have not yet been charged. They've been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the federal investigation. But their names are known. Their roles documented. And investigators believe at least 3 of them held senior positions with direct authority over fraud prevention protocols. That means the very people responsible for stopping this kind of abuse were allegedly being paid to allow it. The 27 defendants now face a legal battle that could span years. Federal prosecutors have built their case on financial records, intercepted communications, physical evidence, and cooperating witnesses. The evidence is overwhelming. Convictions are likely. Sentences will be severe. But the coordinator remains free. Federal investigators believe the coordinator has access to offshore accounts. False identification. Safe houses in jurisdictions without extradition treaties. People who build empires like this don't run without contingency plans. They prepare. They hedge. They ensure that even if the network falls, they survive. And as FBI cyber analysts worked through the night extracting data from the seized servers, they found encrypted messages. Communications with individuals identified only by initials. Individuals whose metadata suggests they hold current positions within federal oversight agencies in Washington, D.C. Individuals who may have been providing advance warning of audits, investigations, and enforcement actions. The Minnesota network was dismantled. But federal analysts now believe it was just one branch in a system that spans the Midwest, the Southwest, and potentially the East Coast. And the architects of that system are still operating. Here's what this really means. Fraud doesn't need to be sophisticated to succeed. It just needs to be protected. It needs people to file complaints that go nowhere. It needs auditors who don't ask hard questions. It needs a system so overwhelmed, so underfunded, so afraid of controversy that it chooses silence over accountability. That's how a family in Minneapolis extracted millions from programs designed to help children. That's how 1 million fentanyl pills ended up stored in a basement 3 blocks from an elementary school. And that's how 12 state employees allegedly traded their integrity for cash payments disguised as consulting fees. The most dangerous criminal networks don't always kick down your door. Sometimes they're the ones signing the licenses, approving the permits, filing the paperwork. Stay vigilant. Because the next daycare center you drive past, the one with a state license in the window and the empty parking lot, might not be what it claims to be. And somewhere tonight, Phase 3 is already being planned.